From Roanoke, Virginia to Ontario, California, from the Badlands of South Dakota to Key West, Florida. Let's ride. We want to ride shotgun with you for the next hour, Talkin Truckin with Deaton and Doty. How's it going, Mike? How's it going, Christian?
Good. How you doing, man?
Good. You like I threw Roanoke in there, Christian?
I like that. Yeah, I like that a lot. I appreciate that. We'll see it soon enough.
Yeah, we're coming soon. So how's your guys' week been going?
Good, man. Most of my guys are home or in the shop, but it seems like these past 2 days have been busier for me than any.
Because you've been fishing.
I wish. If we weren't doing this right now, I might have snuck out there.
Yeah. How about you, Christian?
Yeah, freight's great right now. As you all can tell, most of our guys are out on the road right now. This past weekend, got to see my folks. They're fully vaccinated, went fishing for a little bit. We have fostered a dog that it looks like we're probably going to end up adopting because he's cute and he gets along with everybody. So yeah, life's pretty good right now.
That's awesome. What kind of dog?
It's like a Jack Russell Pit boxer mix.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'll send you a photo. Cute dog.
Cool. Send it to Matthew. We'll put it up on the show.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good.
Very good. Not much been going on here. We did go to the Mackey family cattle show over the weekend in Texas that we mentioned on the show. Ian and Kumar and Tina and I went, and it was a quick in and out. We got there Friday and flew out Sunday, but what a great time. And we'll have Jim on next week, and he can kind of fill us in. We got some good footage to show everybody, so we'll go into that a little next week. But on today's show, we've got our Hours of Service and Compliance Manager from Billings, Montana, joining us to take some questions from us. We can talk a little bit about PC use and hours of service. We've got Ray, who's always on the show with us. He battles Kumar, Trucking with Kumar and Ray. The Wide World of Sports with Joel Howell. And one of our very good drivers, Joanna Dougherty, is joining us for Stories from the Road to take us out at the end of the show. So I'm pretty excited about tonight's show. Before we get on with it, Christian, can you kind of fill us in? We're going to have a giveaway through the month of June for any driver, for a driver on the Deaton or Dawson fleet only, one driver. And what's that for, Christian?
Okay, so Meadow Lark has some pretty cool technology through Netrodyne. It's a camera system, but it's not just for liability purposes. It's got a cool feature, which is gamification, which essentially gives you positive feedback, constructive criticism for some defensive driving moves, things like that, space cushion, speed. Then it also has alerts. It's not a demerit system, but it does carry points. And ultimately, each driver is rated by a point system. And almost like a pole position in NASCAR, you have guys that run first, second, third, fourth, all the way down to the end. So you had called me earlier today, and we thought cream rises to the top. So we ended up having a giveaway. I don't know if you have the make and model there. But for whoever's driver out of our fleets is the number one pole position or leading driver for safety, who has the best score, would be the winner.
So Deaton and fleet and the Dawson fleet will split the cost of the CB.
Yep.
Zach, did you find it yet?
Not yet. There's like a billion different Cobra ones, so I don't know which one you want.
We were just looking. That's a nice one that I saw at the truck stop. It was a Cobra, and a lot of guys probably know what I'm talking about. But it has Bluetooth capabilities,
Yep.
and the screen on the front. Well, you can change colors, or you can have it just flash different colors, and it looks pretty cool at night going down the road in the cab. So we'll get you a nice one. We just kind of wanted to put it out there that we appreciate you trying to. You're just competing good, friendly competition with other drivers. Let's see who can pull off the highest score for the month of June.
Just so you guys know, that is the Cobra 29 XL with Bluetooth.
Okay.
Ian is our IT and technical wizard.
Genius.
So, getting on with it. Today on the show, the best chocolate cream pie maker west of the Rockies, whipping together milk, cream, eggs, and chocolate like there's no tomorrow, making the best chocolate cream pie in the Big Sky, Hours of Service and Compliance Manager from Billings, Montana, Trish Burke. Welcome, Trish.
Hi, guys. How are you?
How'd you like that?
Very nice, Russ. Very nice.
It was a little worse
Chocolate
earlier.
pie is my favorite.
No, we appreciate you, Trish. It's not an easy job what you do, and there's a lot of gray area. That's why we wanted to have you come on. And I don't mean with the DOT or the law. It's just in our head and driver's head. Everybody gets confused at how they should use PC, and so that's a big one.
It is. It's a very big one, and particularly with DOT, there is a lot of gray area with that. So we want to try and help make sure that the drivers aren't getting citations for things that they don't agree with or that need to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to say before we start that none of this falls on Trish. It's DOT, it's law. Anything we go over is law. It's not, Meadow Lark's policies.
Yeah,
It's
it's objective, not subjective. Yep.
yeah,
Right.
it's just the laws we got to follow.
I know, even when I was driving, when safety calls, you're like, ugh. Well, and it's not them.
No.
They're just trying to. And I was pretty fortunate. I've been inspected and never rejected. So I feel like, I did it right. I did okay. I got lucky probably a few times. But you don't realize some of these expensive fines that they can throw at you. And Trish, you mentioned several different times, over the years, you've mentioned this is this kind of a fine, and we're talking thousands of dollars, especially for, false logs if they want to spin it that way, right, Trish?
Yeah, false logs can definitely cost, everybody lots of money. I mean, it's out there that it can cost a driver up to $7,500 and the company up to $10,000 per violation.
Right. And a false log could be something small that you didn't really mean. We've talked about that with one of our drivers just making some edits, Trish, and they were technically legal edits. He was just, kind of editing some on-duty pre-trip time. It's kind of a gray area where he could have done a pre-trip, forgot to go off duty, went and got a coffee, came back out, getting ready to go, and then edited that. A DOT officer could look at that like, he's shaving time down to save his 70. And it's in their hands when they decide they want to, write you up for that and fine you.
Officer discretion, yeah, definitely. Those are things that you do not want to make edits that are unnecessary. If your 14 is running, your 14's running. Making a 5-minute edit here or there can cost you a lot of money in the long run.
And Trish, isn't your husband a driver?
My husband is a driver. Yep.
Yeah,
He does
so
not drive for Meadow Lark. He drives a car hauler. So,
Trish, the other night we were on the phone. You mentioned his safety department tried to do a log edit or change on his logs. And can you tell us about that? Because this is important. Because if you disagree as a driver with the change that Trish's department is sending you to protect you, because they look at it as it was something you did wrong, you can reject that, and then they're going to call you, and you guys can have a conversation, or you should call them and have a conversation when you reject it. So tell us about what happened to your husband.
Well, my husband had been on duty into a shop. He had the shop work done. He had left the shop, and he left the shop on PC to come back to our house. His safety team deemed that it was an illegal PC move to go from the shop to the house. And he was completely off duty. He'd been relieved from duty. There was no load on the truck, no nothing, hadn't been dispatched for the next week, and he rejected it. And, they never said anything to him. So it's safety department communication with the driver that he put an annotation in there, not loaded, PC'd home. The annotations and the communication with the safety department are key. Aaron's just doesn't help anybody. Be specific on those annotations.
Yeah, and on that note, but we're all human. We all make mistakes.
Absolutely.
In dispatch, and driving a truck, the safety department. So if you see something that you disagree with, let's keep our cool. Let's be a professional and give safety a call and say, hey, I just so I understand this correctly, because I think this is a legal move, and they'll have that. Trish will have that conversation with you every time.
And if I don't know the answer, we'll get with Stacy, and Stacy will help me make sure that we do the right thing for you as the driver.
Right.
We try not to make mistakes. We try to be, advocates for the drivers, but all things considered, if we don't have all the information, we can't make the best decision.
Trish,
Go ahead,
and
Christian.
we lived through some real life consequences right in the early inception of VLD on our authority prior to being a Meadow Lark agent. And some of it was hours of service. And I really wish that there are things that we tighten down, not to be hard by the law, but it would have saved us having a scarlet letter and a conditional rating and having to get out of that. And you think about the time and money and resources that are tied up and how that affects your inspection ratio. I mean, those guys don't want to be inspected to go through the DOT. The best way to do that is to improve your ISS score. And that rating is strictly run off of those indicators. And PC is a part of the hours of service, which is one of the largest indicators. So if you want to have a clean bill of health and you want to keep driving past those stations, it's a lot of small changes, a lot of small direction that changes the direction of a big ship. And I applaud you for your efforts because you're not in an easy position,
Well, and we've been working towards increasing that or improving that ISS score because of we want to get out of that must inspect category, and we've done really well with the help of the drivers, making sure that they're doing their part on the hours of service.
Yep.
I've heard so many drivers. It's gotten way better lately because they understand on our fleet. But I've heard so many drivers say, well, I don't even attempt to use PC because I got to call in and it might be a wait before I get a hold of somebody, or it's really late and I don't get a call back for a while. So they just avoid using it. And I understand that can be a headache. I know, Ray, you've had to work around that a few times, and we've had that conversation. However,
yeah,
it's not to penalize anybody for you to call in to get the PC turned on. We're basically trying to get our scores up so that you get less inspections, so that you're stopped less. You're not pulled in at a scale house as often. Yeah. So there's a reason why that we're doing that. It's not just because we want control of PC. It's to keep everything clean and your license clean as a driver.
And the big thing is to help those drivers who might not be making the best choice for a PC use to say, no, that's really not a good use of PC, and save them that possible fine.
Ray, I know you had a question.
If I may, if I could add to that, like I know I have PC time available to me, and I'm the type of person that if I don't have to use it at all, I'm going to try my best to stay away from it. And there's really one big reason why. I mean, a lot of people get mad the company doesn't give them PC, or you got to call in and ask. Well, my bottom line with the PC is that I fear the DOT more than I do Meadow Lark. So if I get pulled in, and if you have any DOT officer ask you, let me see your logs, and they see PC time on there,
they're going to scrutinize.
You automatically know they're going to scrutinize it at any level they can because they're trying to get something on you.
Right.
So that's just the way I look at it.
That officer discretion aspect of personal conveyance. Did you go to the closest location? Did you have hours available that you could have used? Those are all things that in the long run, if they can find some question to what you've done, it's going to cost you money in the long run.
Right. And so my choice is PC time is an absolute last resort for me. I just try not to use it because I've always said it before, I like to fly under the radar, and that's, works well for me.
I never used PC when I drove. I'll be very honest. I don't think I realized what it was. And so if I had to go, and I stayed out on the road, but if I had to go somewhere, I just made sure I had hours to do it. But
Yep.
That was me. Mike.
And there's lots of drivers that do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did it most of the time. I very rarely use
Mhm.
PC. I always had, the hours, or like Russ said, if I didn't.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
And if you
I
want to
very
go somewhere while your
rarely
truck is
use it.
parked, get an Uber ride somewhere.
Well, these
and come
days
back
there
with
was
an
an Uber when I was driving, but these days, oh man, it's
Oh,
so
yeah,
easy.
we're
I'd
we're
rather
talking.
just call an
We're
Uber
The
talking
other
and
thing is
Uber Eats.
the other thing is
Yeah.
when you're using that truck as personal conveyance and you're running through towns and things like that, the thing that a lot of drivers don't stop to think about is that's your livelihood. If you're in an accident on personal time, there goes your paycheck.
right.
Which to me
Your
is
moneymaker.
really, really scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have a
agree.
question for you though, Trish. On the using the PC time to get to a near safe haven. What if it's like maybe 8, 9 o'clock at night when most truck stops are full, and you go to the nearest one, but there's no parking? How do you work it out so it's legal? Do you make a notation? I went to this truck stop, no parking, but you just keep going because eventually, you're going to find something. Hopefully.
Correct.
Does
yeah.
that make sense?
So, yep. The best way for you to keep yourself out of trouble in that situation is to make sure that you are going into the truck stop, making sure that you notate that there's no open space for parking. And don't be afraid to take a picture. If we have pictures that show that it's full, no room at the end, we can fight those. I mean, if they decide to, give you a citation, we can always fight that with good documentation. Again, it all goes back to good documentation.
Okay.
So then is that something, Trish, then do you, if you run out of hours at a place where you pull in and you don't have, there's no parking, do you then PC or just annotate and keep going and
Well,
violation?
If I understood Ray correctly, we're already going to be on PC at that point. Is that right, Ray? Or were you talking actually on duty?
No, yeah, you're right. Yeah, because we'd be on PC already because we were told to leave the shipper property, so
Yeah.
or receiving property, so we'd have to find a safe haven at this point.
So
Okay.
as long as you've already initiated PC, you'll just continue on PC, make sure that it's active, make your annotation, truck stop full, and then go on to the next spot. If you didn't get PC turned on because the customer had run you out of hours, then you would have to notate it and then continue in violation.
Okay,
so
and then you would
can
explain your violation, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, so
you can't once you leave that shipper and basically tell DOT that you have enough hours to get to safe parking, and then something happens inadvertently, you can't turn PC on at that point, because at that point that's extending your day.
Okay, because there's been plenty of times where, I've planned a place to park. I've had an hour left on my clock, get there, and there's no parking. And then you go to the next place, no parking. I've been to 3 or 4 places, no parking, and it's ate up that hour looking for parking. So in that case, you just continue on, note it, and violate till you find a parking spot.
Correct. And you want to, as normal, is, you got to remember that safe parking does not mean a truck stop.
Yeah.
It
right.
means any safe place to park. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm sure all the truck drivers are going to look for the truck stop first, though.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Especially if they got pizza.
Well, that's a question I had. So, Trish, doesn't it say that you can go to the nearest safe haven that has facilities, food, and entertainment? I think that's what it
nearest
says.
Safe parking.
It just
yeah, it doesn't say. I mean, amenities is all it's asking for.
Right.
All it notates.
Your basic function.
Define entertainment.
Area,
I have no idea. I know I read that somewhere, but I have no idea what. I don't even want to imagine what they
I
mean
want
by.
to know where you read it from.
Yeah.
Trish,
Okay.
That would.
Go ahead, Christian.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, Trish, kind of more in viewing PC time, going to the house, whether you're under load, not under dispatch, or even returning to pick up a preloaded trailer in the yard or an empty trailer to go to a customer coming from the house. Can you explain walking through those steps on what's considered PC and what's on duty or drive on?
Any time under dispatch is got to be drive line. So I mean, if you're going to pick up a loaded trailer, you've got to be on duty once you get on that customer property. Getting back, like if you dropped at a customer yard, you PC'd off the customer yard, you can PC back to the yard, but you cannot PC on the yard, because at that point you are on duty getting your dispatch, getting your trailer.
And I think that's important to point out. Obviously in our fleet, we had the incident last week where we had a gentleman that was on the yard and PC'd when he was on the yard to see if the load was ready, as opposed to if he was not on the yard. I guess presumably he could have still walked there, but using the commercial vehicle, then that would have been a violation, correct?
Correct. Yeah. You need to use that yard move. Yard move is going to be your off-duty driving option. It is going to start your clock, or your on-duty driving. I'm sorry. It is going to start your clock, but you're able to drive on their yard with yard move.
So I thought that was interesting. And Christian, Trish likes to call me and tell me anything your guys do that's bad. So that's how I knew about it.
Me too. My phone all the time.
But I thought it was fascinating because I asked Trish, I said, well, so the guy must have dropped his trailer and then PC'd out, right, Trish?
Correct.
Okay, and then he PC'd back, but he went on to the yard to go find his trailer. So that's where he would have had to go on duty yard move, which would have messed up his brake. However, my question was to Trish was, well, if he had parked outside the gate and and walked across that lot, that would have technically been he would have been legal to PC back and wouldn't have messed up. So that's kind of fascinating. It's not our rule; it's the DOT. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but that's the law. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, and a lot of times we'll give the shipper and receiver's phone numbers. So this way, if it is ready, it's one less step, and that's something that Trish, after your conversation, we have corrected, and it's been noted. So that way, we do try to provide the contact information, so you're saving yourself even having a PC over there.
Right. Yeah, as a driver, I would call.
Yeah.
First.
You don't want to go. The customer yards and shops, they're going to be your biggest areas of problems when it comes to PCing back to, because they can't tell if you went. I mean, they can't necessarily tell if you went in all situations, so they're going to assume that you were on their yard.
Gotcha. Joanna, are you with us? Her and I were talking last night, and she had a question for you, Trish.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hi, Joanna.
Hi. Okay, so I went into the shop last week, and I did it on my own time when I got there. I dropped my trailer off at the secured area, and then bobtailed over there and put my truck in the shop. And my mechanic was waiting there, and he says, all right, let me plug it in because this takes a while. And he was in a hurry. And so I just went off duty, and he had to unplug my OmniTrack. So I logged out, and he plugged in the computer to my truck. And when I left there, I asked for a PC because I had some errands to run, and I was going to return back there. And so I ran my errands, and then when I got back, after I got done with laundry, I went back to the shop and then restarted my time, the start point of my PC. And anyways, I got a log notification that my carrier had considered that I couldn't go to the shop on PC, but I wasn't going to the shop on PC. I was just returning to the point of start. So maybe I didn't understand that I wasn't supposed to do that or whatever, but and I didn't know to just reject it and call. or get a call or whatever. So I just went ahead and accepted your guys' change. But I thought that was a legal move, and I don't know. It was probably just a lack of communication. Now that I'm listening.
So the big thing is when you're leaving the shop, make sure that you leave on PC. If you're leaving the trailer there, you want to make sure that you annotate, personal conveyance, errands, bobtail, and then when you return back to that shop, you're returning back to pick up your trailer. That's going to help the compliance team know, when you've done something like that and why you would be going back there rather than going into the shop. It's a very difficult one, particularly if you go towards the building or close to the building of the actual shop, because knowing if you're going back into the shop or not going back into the shop. But if your annotations are, very, very good, that's going to help everybody with the whole picture.
And one thing Joanna, that I mentioned to Trish about that whole situation was, so when Brittany or Atlas or whoever looked at it, they saw that you went on PC to a shop. They're looking at a lot of different logs and PC things. So, like I said earlier, they're human. They could have made a mistake, which in this case, It sounds like they did. However, that's where, you rejecting it and then calling in and saying, wait a minute, just so you guys know, I left the shop to go do my laundry. And then I, came back to the point that I started the PC and to pick up my trailer when it was done. So, and if that had happened, I'm sure they would have changed that. So, everybody makes mistakes. I think that's
and when I got back there, I did do my pre-trip and everything. I went off of PC and went back on duty and and did my thing and checked everything out, and then we left. I just didn't know that I could just reject it. I was just like, because that bugs me when it says reject or accept, and it's like this is a test. I don't like computers. The computers, they haunt me. So I just I just better go ahead and say, okay. I'm sorry.
Don't ever just say, okay, Joanna. We're here to help you. We're on your side.
Yeah, it wasn't a test.
I know that now. I mean,
Christian,
but that Omnitax, it's always bossing me around.
Thing that we need to make sure of is in certain situations, in those errands, you'll do laundry and then something else and this place to that place. You got to make sure that there's no other shops of any sort anytime in those additional errands. That's another thing that can throw research on the PC misuse situation a curveball, because like you say, anything in between there, shops you can't go into a shop on PC. And you can't go shopping for tires, you can't go shopping for chrome, you can't go shopping for CDs. Those kinds of things are
well, that's all considered scope of work. It's in trucking.
Darn. So there goes all my shopping. That's just not fair. That's where I like to go, is the chrome shops. And
Christian, something happened to your audio. We can't. There you go. I couldn't hear you.
Okay, I was just going to say Google's a great tool. Iowa 88. I mean, you just go right on Google and figure it out. You order Chrome and have it delivered to your house on home time.
There you go.
And I think annotation's the best thing. If you're specifying and giving them some word and saying, hey, left the shop empty, went to do my laundry, came back, went back on duty, it does make their job a lot easier. They're not trying to dig through the information. You're providing information to paint that picture for them.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is order your Chrome on Amazon.
Yeah.
I'm going to get Chrome.
well, listen.
Get an Uber.
Yeah, Uber's not a bad idea these days. I'd rather Uber than PC. But Trish, thanks for
Yeah, I'm
joining
not doing
us.
it no more.
Thanks for joining us, Trish. Hang out with us. You can stay on the rest of the show. You got some good stuff coming up. I really appreciate
Thanks, guys.
giving us some clarity here on
Thanks, Trish.
PC use. Anyone else got anything for Trish before we get on to the news?
I do.
Just oh, go ahead, Christian.
I was just gonna say, Trish, you want to the gamification? We didn't explain how the drivers have to log in for that through the Netrodyne system.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, Christian, I didn't hear the question.
I say, as far as the drivers to be a part of the gamification and the CB radio, you want to explain how they sign in or who they should call?
Yeah.
For the app.
Yeah.
If they've all of the drivers on setup are sent an email with their login and a request to set up a password. If they have misplaced that email, they can always call the compliance team and we'll be happy to resend that to them. It's literally logging on, setting up a password, and then seeing all of the gamification portion of the Netrodyne system.
But if they don't enroll, they're not eligible to win, correct?
That's correct. So you got to download the app and, that's how you check your scores against the other drivers on the, nationwide. However, this is just for the Deaton and the Dawson fleet. So if on the app it shows you that maybe another driver from a different terminal other than Deaton or Dawson are ahead of you, that's not gonna beat you.
Yeah, but it's a lot better than your credit score. You can change a lot in 30 days as opposed to 7 years.
Exactly. There you go.
Absolutely. We've seen some great strides already in just the time that we've had the cameras.
Great.
And we're happy to do it. Christian and our fleet, we're happy to do it for our guys. Let's see who can do it, who can pull off the highest score. I mean, we're going to get you a nice CB, and we'll ship it right to your house, your terminal, wherever you want it.
Yep.
All right, thanks, Trish. Hang with us. It'll be a good rest of the show.
Thank you, Trish.
Thanks.
So this week, Ian, in the news.
Yeah, definitely a weird week already. It's only Wednesday. It just seems like we can't get any rest when it comes to this year or last year, and it just keeps on happening. Weird thing I want to start out with this week is the I-40 bridge over in Memphis. It has a huge crack in it, and it is creating a lot of problems. They are just shutting it down completely.
I heard it's indefinitely closed too.
Yeah, they're probably gonna either have to replace it or do some major construction.
Yeah. Sounds like an engineering nightmare. It's a huge bridge.
Yeah, it's such a big deal that they've even restricted water access underneath of it.
Oh wow, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, on a good day before the pandemic, there were like 37,000 vehicles going over it a day.
Wow.
So this is creating quite a disruption. Traffic's been diverted onto the I-55 bridge, but it's backed up pretty far into West Memphis, actually almost past West Memphis, the entire city.
So avoid that area
if
at all possible.
If you can avoid it. Other thing that's really big in the news is this pipeline. For a lot of people who don't know what's going on with it, we can dig a little deeper into it. Basically, the pipeline going from New Jersey all the way to Houston. A lot of barrels go through there a day, and a cyber attack took it down last week. Done by a group called Dark Side. They've been around for a little while and kind of been attacking businesses and corporations all through the U.S.
So Christian, didn't you say that you were 30 cars deep waiting to get fuel or in your personal vehicle?
It depends on the station. Yeah, at least they were backed up past the school. Yep.
Yeah. Ian,
Wow.
we're not seeing that up here, but
no, we're not yet. Actually, as of 5/20, we have an updated percentage of what stations are closed in what state. 46% of gas stations in Georgia are out.
Yeah, I saw Trish sent us that email this morning with all the Loves and the Pilot Flying J's that had no fuel. I was reading that to Tom over the phone. That was crazy. So we were telling guys that were loading in Florida, if you're not full already, man, make sure you got enough fuel to get past the Mason-Dixon line on your way north.
Yep.
It's starting to affect Florida. It's starting to affect Virginia, 50% there. North Carolina, 69%.
Don't do this.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Mike
That's
said
what's causing the shortage.
everybody's stockpiling
Don't
fuel.
put, yeah.
Gas, fuel.
How'd you get a picture of my trunk?
Are you the one putting fuel in trash bags?
Bags.
That's hilarious.
But the real question
That's a lot of
is-
reason for the shortage, Joe. If people just, same thing with toilet paper. If people just
Stocking up.
took what they need, we'd be able to get it back online and get.
It doesn't directly affect this area. That's the thing. Different servicer altogether. It's just fear and mongering.
Well, Christian, since Zach and Ian and Tina and I are driving down to Roanoke coming up here, I hope this continues. We might not be able to come. Not enough fuel.
Or we might need to take some
We've
fuel
already got
down with
200
us.
gallons.
We
forward.
could take one of his trash bags full of fuel.
That's it. Yeah, I got a couple.
The real question is, what is this going to do for fuel prices for our drivers?
Well-
Some people are paying $5.99, $6.99 a gallon for just gas. We don't really know what's going on with the diesel prices yet.
Well,
It's
since
probably
November,
going to follow.
yeah, I don't know how it's going to affect it now, but since November, diesels went up 81 cents a gallon since this past November. I got that from the DOT or the DAT this
Yeah,
week.
79 cents for the last 12 months. Yep.
Yeah. So,
Can I add something on them diesel prices though?
Yeah.
For truck drivers, if you got a good fuel efficient truck, you should make more money when the fuel prices go up. Because here at Meadow Lark, we get 100% of the fuel surcharge, so we have that advantage over other carriers.
yeah, and our fuel surcharge, which the drivers do get at 100%, it's been climbing. I mean,
I'll
every
cover
week.
that
Oh,
later.
very, very steadily
Every
for
week,
a
yeah.
long time. I
Yeah,
wonder
the-
if we'll see a big jump this week from this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Also,
Yeah, so the disadvantage is going to come to all them drivers that work for carriers that don't pay that many fuel surcharge at all or partial.
Right.
So yeah, they're the ones that are going to feel the pinch on the fuel prices.
Right. Well, Ian, thanks for the update on the news and the pipeline. Christian, Mike, so you guys want to go over some of the stuff in the market, truck or freight prices, what you guys have been seeing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Real quick, I'll go over what we watch the DAT webinar every week. These guys put out some really good information. So I'm just going to touch on a few things and you guys can let me know what you think. Spot rate spiked 17% over last week, almost double the 5-year average, and that's on all loads, all trailers. And load post volume is up again this week, now 36% higher than 2018 this time. They did say that, some of that usually you can expect 5% of the truck availability or capacity during the blitz week will, some carriers just slow it down. Guys go on vacation. So they did mention that could be a part of it, but it's not a big part of it. The market update, reefer load to truck ratio almost double over last week, inbound to Chicago from all markets, all tight on capacity. So there's not enough trucks for the amount of inbound loads going into the Midwest Chicago area. A little bit on reefer, Miami outbound, 273 plus fuel, and out of Lakeland, 235 a mile plus fuel. And a fun fact this week is peak strawberry season. On the West Coast, 90% of all the strawberries come from Oxnard, Santa Maria, and Salinas, California. To give you an idea of the rate, coming out of Santa Maria to New York, $3.65 plus fuel, so almost $4 a mile. Our Ontario, California, outbound, $3.41 plus fuel on average. And then I'll just give you the national average. For van, national averages last week were $2.42 plus fuel. Reefer, national average $2.82 plus fuel. And national average for flat was $2.67 plus fuel, all markets. The forecast that they said, it was just that they don't really, it's just better than they were talking about the last 3 or 4 weeks. The freight prices are going to keep going up. On their graphs, they were showing, over the next 30 days, the projections were up to 40 cents a mile more than what it is right now. So that is, I'm loving it. What do you think, Christian, Mike?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's a person in the market that's not loving it unless you're in a contract rate and you're screaming for help.
So Christian, what have you been doing with your guys this week?
Well, let me pull that up. You mind if I screen share a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
So basically, we have a kind of monthly / weekly report that we do. It's called Up and to the Right. So it's a weekly DAT review. We also do a freight waves one now that we've had that for a couple months, which is very intuitive. So we'll start off with breaking down DAT. So if you don't have DAT rate view, you're not going to have access to this information that we're using, and that's something that that we do have with and through Meadow Lark. But what we're going to look at is 3 major comparisons. We're going to look at the broker to carrier. We're also going to look at the shipper to carrier because there's 2 different rates. Typically, broker to carrier is considered spot market, and shipper to carrier is considered contract. We're going to look at the difference, what are the changes that we can actually have as a marker in time. We're going to use December because that's kind of where things were normal post-holiday coming into January with the holiday returns. We're going to look at the last month, what the variance has been the last 30 days for a quick change. And then, and this is something we always look at, but it's even more important with what's going on this week, which is the fuel changes. And so why do we look at these reasons? First is we want to see how our spot rates, our non-contracted rates, our non-customer rates are adding up to our customers. And that's done for 2 reasons. One is to make sure that we try to stay competitive in off-season markets, or when the market is where it is now, that we will beat our contracted rates and thus adjust the rates to our customer where needed if we're finding that we're shorting our guys compared to what the market has. We're finding what trends have happened since the end of the year. And we can import different information for different periods, but I'm kind of giving a very granular, 5-month perspective of this. We check and see what happens in the last 30 days through DAT, or the last 15 if we look through the state-to-state function through a rate view that they have. And we look at what effects fuel has on all-in rates. And we'll have a little Excel spreadsheet I put together, but as of last week, it was $3.19 for the U.S. average. I guess that was this week. So I think it's gone up 4 cents. Russ, you had mentioned since last year, it's about 74-cent increase in the cost per gallon since this time last year. Now it's 79 as of today for what the Department of Information and Energy part of the government website will cover. And just fun fact, everybody complains about taxes being why fuel goes up. It only accounts for about 18%. So again, this can be kind of a granular level, and this comes right from DAT. And basically took the trends, if you take it from December to current, and this is first looking at the van rates. What we want to look at is how similar these lines are and really where they intersect. You also want to look at the trajectory of where the rates are going north and south to see how high they are, but it's also to tell you how the market's going. We all know what happened back here where you can see, spot rates are through the floor as they start to go down towards where COVID was, but contracted rates stay where they were. So if you had a bunch of customer freight, you were doing fine. If you're in the spot market, you couldn't get out of it quick enough and try to obtain freight. All the while, what we're going to find is that things were, spot market rates went up, and then so did the contract rates as tender rejections went up. There was a little bit of a dip, which is the holiday return season, always the first quarter. It was warmer than it normally was, but there's always a dip. But you'll see that you went from 239 to 247 to 259 to 265. And what is 264 versus 269 as of May. And that doesn't include this current week's. I didn't update it for this week's presentation. But ultimately, you'll see an increase in rates. So you would say we're more profitable. I'll get to the fuel cost and how the fuel cost has transitioned since December, which will give us a different inclination. But we look at all the markets because DAT provides all the information. Now, this is interesting. So we start off that contract rates are higher, just the same way it was, and they're trending essentially with normal comparisons, both more or less parallel to each other. But then we start to look at, March, April, and May, and you see that reefers are really breaking off of contracts. I'll show you later through freight waves the tender rejections on how many rejections are coming through and what's driving this price to rise. And contract rates are kind of staying in place for those guys that carry it on a consistent basis right now. Flatbed, even more so. It not only caught up at that we're over $3 a mile. And so this is the rate between contract and spot. So here is our spot rate. Here's our contract in a very open form. That's what it would look like. So if you did a broker to carrier versus shipper to carrier comparison, spot market versus contract, just in May, just in the last 7 days. So what I did was I had this ready last week, then I plugged in the information this week. Reefer last week was 276 versus 308 on a May average. The May average now is 312 versus 286. So what that tells you is the shipper to carrier rate has dropped. But it also said that the spot market rate, the broker to carrier rate, has gone up 30 cents. And that is, obviously you talked about doubling the capacity of freight versus trucks. This is going to create this to continue to happen as the market goes on. I don't see a solution in place other than people just refusing to pay to have stuff moved.
Also, like you said, with the tender rejections, if a carrier can't handle the contracted freight, they're giving it back. And so that's flooding the market, the spot market, with all these loads. Yeah. It's going to drive the price.
Absolutely. Yep. And then we have produce and have strawberries and everything else thrown in the mix, which is just tossing gas on a fire. Van, same thing, not a huge change here. But if you look at, there was a 5 cent change in the contract market. And then flatbed was, again, it's what, 7, 8 cents on the one side and 10 cents on the other, which is consistent. If you look at the consistent movement between contract and carrier rates, spot and contract, they're running neck and neck, and they continue to go up. But what we look at here, and hopefully this shows well on your screen, is I basically put the months in order, January through May. I put in what the broker to carrier spot on DAT runs. I put the shipper to carrier, which is our contract side. Then we look at the difference. What's the broker to carrier spot rate difference? Not only that, but we look at what is the diesel cost that we're gonna hedge this off of. And the reason we have this spreadsheet together is to basically find a delta. It says, hey, if we're getting 20 cents more per mile, that's great. If fuel only went up 5 cents, but we know if fuel went up 27 cents, or fuel from December went up 11 cents, but the cent per mile change from the actual rating per mile didn't justify that, then we're in a loser territory. We didn't make more money even though rates are going up. Rates went up again. We just lost less money compared to fuel on a national average. So this is the whole US. We can break it down by region, but just looking at the United States fuel versus the United States rates from the DAT on what your change in cent per mile are, you find out that it wasn't until March that our guys were making more money than the cost of fuel. So guys were feeling good here because they saw larger gross numbers, but you're putting it right inside your fuel tank because of the increasing cost in fuel. Then you saw that it went, basically continues to climb, basically to a 10 cent variance. So this is what we call the delta. So considering fuel and the cent per mile change, what is the net number? And then we also track spot versus contract like we did before. What's the difference? So this shows us that the broker to carrier market was 3 cents higher than the shipper to carrier contract market, right? And then it continues to break down, and it'll flip. It flipped in this month and it came back. But if you look down towards, if you look down here towards the reefer, you'll see that it's really grown. So the spot above contract was 1 cent, and then now it's 32 cents, which means the spot market's the place to be. You'll also look at the delta here, which shows that you weren't really making any additional money in February, but you really started to make some kick butt money here in the last 3 months. And you'll see the same thing will be for flatbed. Everybody knows where flatbed's at. There's nothing to rescue the seasonal influx that we have here. So here's the spot above contract, right? It runs 15 cents above, and you're running 40 cents above your fuel cost and increase, because a lot of times guys look at a gross number. And for those guys like Ray that run at 63 miles an hour and save, 0.1% for every mile per hour that he runs at the speed limit, he's just dumping money into his pocket. You might have a lot of people cutting him off because he's going to the speed limit in the right lane, but what he's doing is he's putting more money in his pocket every mile he drives. So the more efficient trucks that burn less fuel, and if you can run a more efficient mile, keep your miles up, you're going to make a lot of money. Any questions on that?
No, that was very thorough.
Okay.
And I will say, like you mentioned with Ray, I used to drive the same way. I drive slow. I always felt like if I could put $200 to $300 a week, and maybe it's not always that much, but if I could drive slow enough to put a couple $100 a week in my pocket, that's anywhere from $800 to $1,000 a month. That was a good chunk of my truck payment.
It's 2 weeks vacation.
Well, I told Christian and I were talking about it earlier, and I think I figured out the math when I was on the road. You can a van payment our van payment, you can pretty much cover your trailer payment with cutting your speed down, trying to conserve fuel, paying attention where you fuel, you know, where we get our biggest discounts. You know, you can make a van payment close to it every week
You
by
can
doing that.
And I gotta say, you know, if any drivers out there, if you want to know how to do it, or you want to talk to Ray about how he does it, Ray, I think you use profit gauges. I didn't use that. I used a legal pad to do my math. But isn't that what you use, Ray, for keeping track of your fuel?
Yeah, I use profit gauges for my accounting software, but I use fuel gauges, and it's free for anybody who wants. Just if you're just tracking fuel mileage, fuel gauges is free. You don't need to pay for that. You only need to pay for the profit gauges, which is the accounting side of it.
Gotcha.
Well, if you look at the indirect savings, I mean, you look at the tire, the wear and tear on your tires. I mean, the faster they are, the hotter they are, right? You get down that last 430 seconds, 330 seconds, right? You're going to have your most efficient mile with the heat load be taken off. You're going to make sure that, you know, that's your best fuel mileage on low. I know guys like to replace them when they start to look bad, but as long as they're DOT and they're safe and they're not coming apart, you know, that's your most efficient mile. And when you look at your brakes, you know, not just your fuel, but everything altogether, let alone the liability and renewals at insurance if you are just putting pedal down the entire time.
Well, thanks, Christian. That's some really good information, and we'll touch back on that next week. See what the changes are, especially with this pipeline situation that's going on, and see if it starts affecting that.
Do you feel that a lot of guys know about fuel surcharge and how it's calculated?
How it's calculated?
How it's calculated, yeah, because, you know, a lot of guys say, you know, for instance, I get 100% of fuel surcharge. It doesn't cover your entire fuel bill, but what it does is give you a percentage of that. You know, and just kind of an easy way to remember, it's every 5 cents that it goes at the pump, it's going to go up 1 cent per mile. So if you see it jump 10 cents at the pump, your fuel surcharge should go up 2 cents per mile on average if you're running a national average.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so
that's good information.
Most times when you're pricing through a customer, the base rate's roughly $1.24. And so you have 0 fuel surcharge, 0 cents of fuel surcharge at $1.24. And every 5 cents from that $1.24 that it goes up 1 cent per mile, which is how we get the calculation of fuel surcharge. So for instance, fuel went up on this slide here, fuel went up 4.4 cents. It went up just enough to take it from 36 cents a mile to this week being 37. This time last year, it was 21. And so what that means is that it was 74 cents. If you do the math, it's roughly 19 or 20. It's close compared to $1.24. But for the 5 cents on the price of per gallon that it goes up 1 cent per mile. So it went up just 1 cent.
Could I ask you a question though? What is the base rate of fuel? Because my understanding is the fuel surcharge the national fuel surcharge is meant to keep the commercial drivers paying right around $1.75 a gallon. Is that correct?
Yes.
After you get your fuel surcharge and this is not including discounts, only the surcharge.
Right, just the surcharge. So the surcharge is based off of the national average. So if you take the national average this past week, it went up 4 cents to $3.19. You basically do the math between $3.19 and $1.24, and you divide that by 5.
Right.
And that would be it. So what they run is they run a baseline of $1.24. Some people agree with it. As we get Tesla and electric, you know, trucks, we're going to have a completely different model here in 5 years than we do for the last 30. But essentially, they give you a baseline of $1.24. And I believe that's because that's what they justified as the rough cost of fuel. And 6 miles to the gallon, 5 cents for every time it changes on the pump is basically an equation to say that we're going to cover the additional cost. Now, if you have a more fuel truck, if you're running 63 and you're getting 7.5, 8 miles per gallon, Ray, then you're going to benefit.
Yeah, you're paying less. You're actually paying less of fuel tax, and you're also benefiting off the fuel surcharge.
Yeah. So Ray, and when you look back at this, you'll see that it's EIA.gov, but the government makes everything easy. So it's the Independent Statistics Analysis of U.S. Energy Information Administration, but EIA.gov, and I know that's on Meadow Lark's website. They have the fuel index on there, as well as just ours and Deaton Truckin. If you ever want to look at it, this is it. And this is the United States. So you can break it down by territories, East Coast, Midwest, but ultimately you're looking at the change from a week ago. And then you're looking at what the changes from a year ago, and then they have the last 3 weeks. If you click the XLS, it's a full history. It goes back to like 92 or something crazy. If you just want fun facts to look at to see what your grandparents used to pay for fuel, but today is relevant. and it went up 4.5 cents. So now we end up having 1 more cent per mile for fuel. And they're pretty neat. So here's this week. This was last week when it went up, 1.5 cents, 1.8 cents. And here's this week. It went up 4.4 cents. So now it's up 79.2% from a year, or 79 cents per gallon from a year ago. And now it's at $3.18.6 per gallon for a U.S. average. And you can break down. If you're Central Atlantic, I mean, you guys see where the fuel's running out of. You see what happens to the fuel prices. This had much more than a 4% climb. And this is going to continue. So if you end up looking at pricing for where you're going and you say, well, I'm paying a lot more for fuel, how much? This will give you within 7 days of an accurate number for what the Central Atlantic, the New England states, the West, the Midwest. And this kind of gives you just a breakdown.
So with that, Christian, so are we looking at 39 cents next week?
Yes. Yeah, okay. It's going to be every bit of it. If we look at what fuel's doing, and I wouldn't say gouging, but it's just like freight, it's supply and demand. Mm-hmm. Somebody's charging $9 a gallon for fuel, you need to call the government and report it. But as supply dwindles, right? I mean, it's capitalism. Mm-hmm. They're going to get more for what they have, even if supply is just a temporary outage.
Right.
The cost to get the fuel. When we pay for expedited freight, if you want it there in 1 day versus 2 and a team driver, you're going to pay more. It's no different for fuel. But yeah, so yes, these are going to continue to go up. And as you stated, that even just the market alone is going to create an upward tick. And bar something super catastrophic happening, which we've lived through in the last 12 months anyways, 14 months, we're going to continue to see this grow. But this is important because this tells us whether we're doing a profitable job as a company making money for our drivers. If we say, yeah, man, I got an extra 6 cents, per mile this week, but fuel went up 15 or 20, 25 cents, then you're break even. You're not doing him any favors. He has a higher gross, right? But he has the same net. And it's how much money are they putting in their bullfold and not in their fuel tank each week. And this is a pretty good indicator. And on that spreadsheet, we usually put our cent per mile to the right of it to make sure that we're always hedging over that. That's why we call it up and to the right. We always want to be up and to the right of the number that we're measuring. And even if we're down, our goal is to make sure we understand what we did to make sure that we were below the average. And it may be that we might be above the average, but then we look at where we ran, we did a disservice to running guys in the Northeast, right? When fuel goes off up there, everyone's going to go crazy. So, where are you sending your guys? People always look at tolls, and that's a constant, but that the tolls don't change as frequently as fuel or your IFTA fuel taxes. So this is something really to keep in consideration.
Yeah, definitely.
For what's happening.
So
it had me on mute.
Oh yeah, you got to hit that button. So Joel has some questions. Joanna, we do this thing every week, and I know you've watched the show, Trucking Questions with Kumar. So Ray, Joanna, I think you're both going to go against Kumar this week and see what's going on here. And Joanna, Kumar doesn't work in the office during the day. He works for a public school, and he knows nothing about trucking. So Joel,
well, he does now because he's had some crickets.
Yeah. So Joel,
learning too quickly for my liking.
What do you got for us for Trucking Questions with Kumar?
All right, Kumar.
Yes, sir.
Pretty easy week. Could you tell me simply what a yard jockey is?
Oh. Okay, a yard jockey.
It's a little tractor.
Don't say anything. Don't say anything. We got to make Kumar answer first because he knows nothing.
Luckily, I didn't hear anything.
Oh.
Crickets.
Okay, go ahead.
That was Kumar. Just kidding.
A yard jockey.
I was wrong anyway.
Is he eating crickets today?
No way.
I don't know if we have crickets left.
No, we don't. Yeah, I ate them all last time.
What's a yard jockey, Kumar?
I'd have to say that's like a person who helps out in like trucking yards.
What would they do? How would they help?
Load and unload freight, and give the guys water, give the truckers water.
Joanna? Give the truckers water. Joanna, Ray, what's a yard jockey?
It's a little it's a person who drives a little tractor. Well, it's not really a tractor. I don't know what you call it. But they drag trailers from door to door, you know.
So they move
You see 'em a
Yeah,
lot
they're the
at
ones who move the
Walmart.
trailers, right?
Yeah.
Basically, they
They're
just move
the- they're
trailers
the-
right around yards.
Yeah, they're the NASCAR of any DC.
Yeah, they fly.
any distribution place is center, you will see a NASCAR DC. You know, those guys, they just
Yeah, they fly.
I've never heard that. Yeah, I've never heard that before. I like that.
And Kumar, they don't pass out water to drivers. Usually, they just give you a hand gesture when they're going by, or if you have a question, they're not real friendly.
Oh, yeah, doesn't sound very
Definitely
nice.
not handing out water.
To be clear, Russ, they're not handing out waters.
What's that, Christian?
I said to be clear, they're not handing out waters.
No, not at all.
Make sure.
Yeah, they're
not.
So
the other thing to note is that we got to follow. Yeah, we have to follow the DC speed limit. They don't. They're like cops.
Yeah. Yep.
I
They
would
just
want to
splash
see
you with
what would
water
happen
as they
if you
drive
did
over a mud puddle.
So Joel, question 2. We only got a few of these this week. Question 2 with Kumar.
Kumar, easy question. Could you tell me what a long form is?
A long form. Give me a second on this one.
Come on, Kumar. I'm on your side on this one.
You got a cheerleader over here.
These aren't easy. I don't know. These are not easy questions.
It's a long form.
It's a really long trailer for a truck.
Yep.
And then like the shorter ones are short form.
That's a good answer, though. I like it. Ray. Joanna, tell him what a long
You want me
form
to-
is.
It's
I'll let
the-
Joanne answer it.
It's the full medical report for your DOT.
That is correct.
Okay.
Ray and Joanna, 2-0
The
against Kumar.
long form is the page, the whole. Sorry, Ray.
Close.
I'm he has me on here every week doing this, so I'll let you answer.
Okay.
So
You
Joel,
can
let's
fill
get
in for me anytime I need a day off.
Joel. Let's get one
Yeah,
more.
right.
All right. Cool. Easy one here. All right.
Sure.
Who or what is a governor?
A governor?
Arnold.
Oh my goodness, that's a great answer. That's a great answer.
That wasn't me though. That was
Oh,
Zach.
yeah.
So I still got to answer it. And it is trucking related. A governor.
The governor.
Like it's. That's the word.
Who or what is a governor? Was his question.
Governor. A person who oversees the yard jockeys.
And hands out water.
That's great. That's great. And hands out water. To be clear, they're not handing out water. Joanna, Ray.
Trish could be a governor, right? She's a governor, right? Trish could be our governor.
Yeah, if it were a person, it might be Trish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it is the language of my people. It's a Jake break.
Well, it could be the Jake brake, or it could be if your
Computer.
truck is governed at a certain speed in the ECM.
That too.
It could be that.
I don't know what that
Computer
is.
governing.
I don't know. I don't know
Okay,
what that
you said
means.
a Jake break? What's
to be-
what's a Jake break?
That's next week.
That's
It's
next
engine
week.
brake.
Do some homework.
It's like a.
Yeah. When you're trying to sleep at night, you hear the trucks go. Brrr, that's Jake brake.
So this
Yeah.
week,
I
was
remember that for next week.
I was talking to Joanna the other day, and Joanna, you were telling me about cooking spaghetti in the truck, and I was I used to cook in a crock pot in the truck, but I asked, I'm like, how'd you make the noodles? And it was kind of funny. She's like, well, I got a stove and propane, those little twist off ones, and I boil water. And so yeah, why don't you share with us? I know Ray cooks in the truck a lot, but what have you been cooking in the truck, Joanna?
Oh, my favorite is mashed potatoes with a ribeye and homemade gravy, or asparagus.
Wow.
You know, that's my favorite go-to meal. That's when I've had a really rough day. I'm going to whip it out. I'm going to boil up my potatoes. I mash them. Everybody laughs at me because I have a potato masher in my truck. And I'm like, hey, the girl's got to eat.
That's right.
And I like my potatoes.
Me too.
I don't have a microwave or anything. I don't have an inverter or anything. So I gotta, I use, like I'm camping every night, I'll cook, if I'm down for a 34, I'll make a pot of stew. I'll cook chili. It's stuff that is easy that you can store in containers and then heat up in a little pot later,
Yeah.
Hey, Joanne, don't you hate it when you hit the brakes? Don't you hate it when you hit the brakes and the potato masher comes flying to the front seat?
No, I actually have a kitchen utility holder that I have all my everything, and I'll make homemade whipped cream and have strawberry shortcake. I'll do anything. I make cornbread.
You chain your potato masher to the counter in the back, like the pin at the bank. That way it doesn't come flying to the front.
Right. It's in my cupboard, in its container. It doesn't go anywhere unless I want it to.
I was pretty fascinated about what you've been cooking.
I make homemade tortillas. I do all kinds of stuff. I make fry bread.
Keep the bag of fuel away.
Christian's head just exploded over there.
Coming through Roanoke anytime soon. That's all I got.
Yeah.
And and then I'm
that adventurous.
Well, come on the road with me for a week, girlfriend. We'll eat good.
and you'll be able to use your PC anytime you want with Trisha on the truck.
Yeah, and I gotta cook for my little fur baby, because he can't really. He's 17. He's a little Australian Sheltie healer mix, and he's old, so he can't eat the crunchy dog food, and I don't like giving him canned dog food. So I'll even make his meals. I get ground turkey or ground chicken, rice, peas and carrots, and he's got to have this vegan broth because he won't eat it if it's just regular chicken broth or something. There's this really creamy vegan. Oh yeah, he's spoiled. A vegan, high protein, creamy broth that they have, and it's really good. And boy, I get dirty looks when I'm tasting it. I go, I gotta make sure it's good for you, But yeah, he knows when I'm cooking for him too. I make that for him for about every 3 or 4 days. I gotta make him a batch, and I just keep it in the fridge and heat it up when he's ready to eat.
So I'm starting to figure
so
out.
Even he gets home cooked meals.
I'm starting to figure out, Joanna, why Keith is always chasing you around the country in his truck because you're feeding him.
Yeah, I make sure he eats too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. How long have you been driving, Joanna?
Since 2003.
Yeah. Where'd you start out at?
At Prime. Please remember, I mortgaged everything. I need cash. No, I'm just kidding. That's what they used to say.
Yeah.
Russ knows about Prime.
Well, yeah, my husband, he worked for them out of Salt Lake, and he wanted to train me to drive. And the Salt Lake terminal was really great. We did the 11 Western states. But then once I got my license, they made us go to the big one in Springfield, and which is a awesome facility. If they put his, I better bite my tongue. Anyway, but I had a lot of fun experiencing things. The one thing that I can say is, boy, once you get that license in your hand, they're forcing you out the gate. We were running as a full-blown team. I didn't even have my stamina built up yet. I was like, you want me to do how many miles? Really? Now I can just breeze right through it, Some days are better than others, But it was an experience.
Didn't you come from a trucking? You came from a trucking family, right, Joanna?
Oh yeah, my grandpa was a truck driver. My dad was a truck driver. I basically grew up in the United States on the road with my dad all the time. And then nobody else would go with him, but my golly, I'd hop in that truck. I got a real passion for trucks. I love older trucks, Peterbilts and the old cab over Kenworths and, you know, the W9s and these old Western Stars like I have. I just love them. And anytime I look at a truck, somebody's like, yeah, well, she don't look that great. And I go, oh, no, she looks great. I see the vision that I have for that truck.
Yeah. And we're going to put up,
my dad.
We'll have a picture up of your truck. I've seen Joanna's truck, and she keeps it nice and clean and in and out, inside and out. I know you stopped and visited with Tom. You and Keith did not that long ago, and Tom said, he said, man, her truck was remarkable, how clean it was inside and out.
Yeah, I try. You know, she's a work in progress. I have a lot of plans for her. She's going to be an eye turner once I get her all fixed up, but, you know, business first. But yeah.
And she's a moneymaker for you.
I plan on keeping
really
this
well.
truck. I keep her under the hood. That's my main goal. And, you know, I just want to keep her sound because, you know, she will shine in her time.
Yeah.
Those are my goals.
Have you ever taken a runaway truck ramp, Joanna?
No.
Thank God.
No. I'm scared to death of hills, so I respect them big time. When it says go 18 miles an hour, if you weigh this much, guess what? This chick is doing like 10. I'm like,
Jake brake on.
I don't.
Good job,
Yep,
Joanna. Good job.
Yeah, I don't mess around with the hills. I've seen so many accidents out here. Growing up on the road, I think I saw more violent things that a truck can do
Because you rode with
when
your
it gets
dad,
out
right?
of control. Yes, my dad, he always says, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. And, you know, he was always pointing out, don't ever do that. Don't let me do that. You know, he was constantly, you know. I remember coming across the Mississippi River when they were adding the other 2 lanes when it used to be a 2-lane highway. And then they added the other 2 lanes. Speaking of that same bridge that's shut down now.
Talking about on 40, yeah.
And yes, and I remember coming over it, and all it was 2, you know, like planks, like a trail that you just had to stay on. If you moved over it, you were going to fall down. You know, it was like, this is crazy. And I remember my dad had an old Kenworth cab over. I would jump in the back, close that curtain, and he's like, get out here. This is the Mississippi River. I don't care. I'm not looking. I just remember freaking out so bad as a little girl.
That's
I was like, that's crazy. Yeah. But I remember when they added those 2 lanes, it made it a 4-lane, you know, or now it's actually even more. But I remember when they added 2 extra lanes on there. And we had to go over it, and there was nothing but a little wooden bridge that you drove over, and I was just like, crazy.
You told me not that long ago that when you were a little girl, your dad would have you. He gave you some phone numbers and told you he was an owner operator, and he told you, hey, call them and see if they got a load for me. So you were booking freight at a really young age.
Yeah. Yeah, I would be like 8, 9 years old. Even actually, I think the first time I ever called, I was like 7. And I just remember they used, you know, when you sat at the table in the truck stops back then, we would get our little CB mugs. I don't know if any of you all been around that long, but they used to come in the CB talker, the little mugs with all the CB handles on them. They're little tiny mugs. I would have my hot cocoa, and Dad would have his coffee, of course. And he'd hand me his little notebook, and he's like, and the lady would bring a phone, and you plugged it in at your table, and you'd sit there and rotary dial, you know, dial these numbers and ask them if they got anything there in the area. You know, he'd give me like 2 or 3 numbers to call. And they got to where they knew who I was when I would call in with my little tiny voice. I'm like, oh, little Coyote wants to load for her dad. Do we got anything? You know, and it was awesome. You know, I ran into one of my dad's old buddies out here one time a couple of years ago, and he just couldn't believe that I was all grown up and doing the same thing. He's like, I always knew your dad's biggest fear would come true. Because I always had a love for trucks, but it's my dad's fault.
That's really cool. Yeah, you've
Yeah.
been at this a long time then.
Yeah. More than I can, and my dad used to let me drive his truck around in the yard, or, when we get back home, he'd say, "There, go park the truck," and I'd be like, "Oh, really? Yes."
Yeah.
I'd be so excited.
A PC move before it's time.
Yeah.
Didn't have to worry about it back then.
They switched
There
it
was
to yard
nothing
move.
on.
They switched log
Yeah.
books.
Yeah. Get number 2. Bring out number 3. I forgot I used that one already.
Yeah.
No. But
Well, that's
that
really,
was when
really
trucking was
interesting.
trucking,
Yeah. That's the thing, though. It was different back then. My uncle drove, probably from around 1960 till probably into the 90s. And he's been retired for years now. But, he would drive from Cleveland, Ohio to Laredo. And my aunt, she rode with him, eventually got her CDL. But she said, honestly, he didn't stop. And then he'd jump out of the truck
Right.
and run into the bathroom in Laredo.
Trish, you there?
Yeah.
I'm here, yep.
This was in 1960, Trish. But, hey, Joanna,
I
real quick.
wasn't there.
Do you remember there used to be, when I was a kid, and I'm 49, and I was young, I don't remember how old, but there was a show called BJ and the Bear. The guy that had the
Yes.
he had the cab over with the monkey that would
Yep.
ride with him.
Yep.
I found, there's only like one season. I found it on Amazon or somewhere a few years ago and bought it on DVD, and it's very poor quality. Obviously, but I don't know. It's probably from 1980.
It's 1981. It went
Yeah.
off the air. Huh?
I used to think that was the greatest show, and when I was a kid, because I love trucks too. But as I watched it as an adult, when I ordered it, and I paid kind of big money for it. I think they were, I don't know, but it was terrible. I loved it.
You paid the vintage price.
I think so. Do you remember that show, Ray?
Yeah, I do. And you paid the vintage price.
I think I did. Yeah.
Sent it for $5
Wow.
last week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Then we get
I paid $4 a mile.
Smokey the Bandit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we got Smokey and the Bandit from that, and all kinds of other spin-offs were pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, BJ and the Bear was cool. I remember that show.
Yeah.
Of course, and then I watched all the trucking shows. That was our thing. That was mine and my dad's thing. Like when Smokey and the Bandit came out, that was father-daughter date. We went out to the movies and watched it. Couldn't wait to see it, and it was awesome.
Well, Joanna,
Yeah.
we were talking the other night about cooking in the truck. We talked a little on the show about it. Carol in our office is working on a cookbook and she has some ideas, but she's getting recipes from other drivers. So a cookbook for while you're on the road. I mentioned some of the things you told me about to her, and we'll definitely do a show about cooking on the road, and I'd definitely love to have you back.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it was great talking to you. So, guys, with that, if you guys don't have anything else, Joanna, thanks so much for joining us, and I can see you
Yep,
coming on
my
again
pleasure.
for sure. Christian, you got anything? Doty, you got anything?
That's it. No, I enjoyed this.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks, Jordan.
Couple shout outs before we go. Truckworx Kenworth of Dothan, Alabama, and all over Alabama. Ray just got his second truck. We've been mentioning it. Ray will put a picture up on the show. He's on his way home to his daughter's graduation on his maiden voyage in that 2007. What is it, Ray? A 17 KW 680?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And actually, it was our driver, Robert Selby's trade-in, because Robert got a 2020 W9. That's, yeah, really, we put that on the show before. So, yeah, Brian, thank you for taking care of Ray. Also like to shout out Over the Road Apparel, work clothes for the modern day trucker. And we had such a great time with Louis Vasquez last week. He's opened this his new place, him and his wife, Prime Wellness and Performance in San Antonio, Texas. Their website is linked to our all our social media, right, Zach? And we will put it up on this show. And as always, Ian,
Like, subscribe, and comment. Thanks, guys.
go Browns, go Indians, and go Cavaliers.